Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and this is the Win Place Show, a podcast devoted to all aspects of horse racing and handicapping that is proudly part of the Amalfi Media Network. Today, we're switching it up with previewing 3 graded stakes races at 3 different tracks. That's right, we're going coast to coast. We're going to start with Aqueduct and the Grade 2 Red Smith Stakes, and then we're going to go to Churchill Downs for the Grade 3 Chilukki Stakes, and then finally Del Mar for the Grade 3 Native Diver Stakes. Now, before we get into all of that, just a quick reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Play Show on the podcast platform of your choice. I have to say, really appreciate those of you who take just 5 seconds to scroll down when you're listening to the podcast, press that 5-star button, give us a very quick rating. Really helps us spread the word and allows for the podcast to appear on more searches for users and fans of horse racing. So really appreciate that. Additionally, I encourage you to subscribe to the Win Play Show YouTube channel. If you're watching, you've already hopefully subscribed, but if not, press that subscribe button right up top. We'll continue to have our weekly previews throughout the off-season, so to speak, throughout the winter and early spring. We'll have our race recaps on Monday mornings and the latest in horse racing news. I also have interviews lined up with some prominent figures throughout the industry. And then the next couple of weeks, we have some guest handicappers coming on who are going to help me handicap some races, actually at Aqueduct both times. So next week over the Thanksgiving holidays, and then the following week, that first weekend in December. So should be a lot of fun. Additionally, remember, we have a blog that corresponds with these episodes where I give you my win, my place, and my show for the entire card. Now, I'm not going to give you my win, place, show for Aqueduct, Churchill, and Del Mar, just because I'm not doing all that. I do have a real job, so I only have so much time, but I am doing it for Del Mar. So that's the track that I'm going to be handicapping this Saturday, and you can get my picks for all of the races at Del Mar on that day. And the best place to get that is to head over to amalfimedia.com or to follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace, where I'll also be giving out some picks for a few of the races that are taking place at the Big A and Churchill Downs over the weekend. Now, remember, those pick blogs are also a great place for getting your stables ready for stable duel contests, as I include all of the fantasy stable prices next to my picks. And there's some big stable duel competitions this weekend at Del Mar, $10,000 contest on Saturday. So some really big money contests. That $10,000 contest, I think there's a $150 buy-in, but there's also some small, there's like a $3 game as well. So you don't have to spend a lot of money if you don't want to. You don't have to wager a lot. You can wager very little and just have some fun playing. So no matter what your caliber of handicapping is, whatever your comfort level is in terms of contests, go for it. They have something for you. Finally, make sure to interact with us on Twitter and on YouTube and let me know what you think about the races and how you see them breaking down, and share with your fellow fanatics on social media. Okay, so let's dive into the races, and we'll start east and work our way west. So we will start with Aqueduct, and just a quick note that it is raining on Thursday evening at Aqueduct. I don't know if they're going to run on the turf on Friday, but the race that we're previewing, the Red Smith, is a turf race on Saturday. I would expect for the turf to be at least good. I don't know if it'll be firm, but I don't think it'll be soft or yielding. So I don't anticipate too much of an issue there. Something to certainly keep an eye on. But like I said, they might be running off turf on Friday. And so I'm sure, going to try to keep the turf in as good a condition as possible for this race on Saturday. But with that said, let's take a look at the Red Smith Stakes. And this is a 1 3/8 on turf for 3-year-olds and up at Aqueduct. It's a 10-horse field, and let's run through all 10 horses. So in post position number 1, we have Tide of the Sea, trained by Mike Maker and jockeyed by Louis Saez. Then Value Engineering, trained by Chad Brown, jockeyed by Dylan Davis. Soldier Rising, trained by Christophe Clement, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Serve the King, trained by Chad Brown, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Sham Rocket, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Javier Castellano. Corelli, trained by Jonathan Thomas and jockeyed by Manny Franco. Channel Cat, trained by Jack Sisterton and jockeyed by John Velasquez. Sanctuary City, trained by James Ferraro and jockeyed by Ruben Silvera. Then the number 9 hole, you have No Word, trained by Todd Pletcher, jockeyed by Jose Lezcano. And then finally, in the 10 hole, you have Price Talk, trained by Anthony Dutrow and jockeyed by Eric Consell. So let's talk a little bit about this race. And this one is, I think, very easy to see how it's going to play out early. Channel Cat at 4-1 is going to go to the lead. This is a horse that likes to get to the lead and is capable of wiring the field, which is not common to see in turf racing. You see that more commonly in dirt racing. In turf, it happens sometimes, but it's just not as common. And typically those rabbits, those pace setters, those early speed and turf races really fade. Certainly that does happen at Channel Cat sometimes, particularly at maybe the grade 1, grade 2 level. So there is some concern there that I have about Channel Cat fading. But what I do not doubt is that Channel Cat is going to set an insanely hot pace, because that's what Channel Cat does. And it's going to go to the lead. Tide of the Sea, the 15-1 horse from the inside rail, also typically likes to go for the lead. But when you just put apples to apples next to each other and compare how these two horses run in terms of their fractions, in terms of their pace figures, Channel Cat is by far and away the faster of the two horses. And so I would expect Channel Cat to get the lead. Sister Tide of the Sea may very well challenge and be kind of right outside or right behind Channel Cat. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those situations where Channel Cat, and you see this in turf racing pretty regularly, that Channel Cat's going to be 6 to 7 lengths clear of the field. And then Tide of the Sea might be leading the rest of the horses, the rest of the pack, because Tide of the Sea does like to get to the front. So I think those two horses, though, are going to be the clear early speed. Tide of the Sea, it does not have the class of Channel Cat. I think that horse will most obviously get gassed. It does like this distance, but has Tide of the Sea, that is, but has not performed particularly well over the last 6 months, really since April, has really struggled. So Channel Cat, though, is the early speed. That's a horse you do have to factor into your exotics, perhaps, because Channel Cat, even if it does fade, doesn't win, maybe this horse runs such a fast pace that others kind of really fall back. Maybe it holds on for like a third place finish. So Channel Cat at 4-1 is certainly a horse you have to consider. But let's move to the horses that I'm really kind of taking a look at here. And we'll start with the lesser, so to speak, of the two Chad Brown horses, and that's Value Engineering. Now, this is a big step up in class for Value Engineering, who's not run in a graded stakes race before, now going into a grade 2. This is a horse that likes passing other horses. This is a horse that likes running behind a hot pace. It's going to get both of those things. Going to have plenty of horses to pass, going to have plenty of pace to run into. Has run in solid fields and, is a Chad Brown horse. So I trust Chad Brown to put this horse in a good position to succeed. This may be a growing experience, but I actually think this is a really respectable horse that has the type of running style and the way this race sets up. I really like the way this horse is looking. And if you look beyond just the speed figures and you look at the fractions and you look at the final times, this is a horse that's running extremely fast and is running faster than some other horses in this field. Now, I should point out, distance is a question mark. It's run 1 3/8 miles before, but typically runs closer to 1.25 miles. So this is a little bit of a step up in distance, not a huge step up, but a little step up in distance, something to keep in mind. But Value Engineering at 8-1, I love that value, honestly. And I trust Chad Brown a lot. And Dylan Davis is a good jockey up in New York as well, has had a lot of success. So wouldn't surprise me to see a good run from Dylan in this particular race. Now let's go to a horse that I don't maybe like as much. I see maybe going the other direction. And that's Soldier Rising. This is a horse that seems to be regressing. When you dig into the caliber of races, it's interesting. You'd say, well, this is a horse that's running graded stakes races. Absolutely. And you'd think, well, this is a horse that's running against better competition than Value Engineering. Well, maybe. Interestingly enough, both of them, both Soldier Rising and Value Engineering, last time out, ran 1 1/8 miles. Okay? Value Engineering, who won his race at 1 1/8 miles, ran at 2 seconds faster than the horse that won Social Rising's race. Social Rising, by the way, finished 5th in that race. So that's part of the reason why I really like Value Engineering, because there's a lot of speed there. And this is a horse that's running very fast figures. I have a feeling Soldier Rising might get bet down. The Christophe Clement just winning the Breeders' Cup with Pizza Bianca, Jose Ortiz, giving that horse just an amazing ride down the stretch. I think might still be fresh in people's minds. I just see this horse going the wrong direction in terms of where it's placing in its finishes, how it's running in terms of speed figures, how it's running in terms of time fractions. This horse is not going in the right direction, in my opinion. So I'm a little out on Soldier Rising at 5-1. Now, the other Chad Brown horse, which is the favorite, Serve the King, this is a horse that does not blow you off the page. A consistent horse, has run against some very good class, grade ones, has shown some improving speed the last couple of races, very consistent. Couple of wins over the last few races, couple of places, couple of shows, some fourth places. Again, doesn't blow you off the page, has a good turn of foot, but not an amazing turn of foot. Interestingly, has never really run behind a pace like it's going to see in this particular race. I don't think that's a problem. Serve the King likes to usually sit back in that 5, 6, 7 position, so shouldn't be an issue. It's not like it's going to get sucked up into an early lead or a speed duel or anything like that, but it is interesting to note that this is a horse that does sometimes run behind very slow paces. I actually think running behind a fast pace might be better, but we'll see. Obviously, the Chad Brown, Irad Ortiz Jr. combo, always something to take seriously. But this is a very consistent horse. And even if you don't like this horse to win, I have a hard time fading this horse off the board because, again, it's just a very consistent horse. I don't love the value at 3-1 to win, but I do think this is a horse that's going to be in your top 3 no matter how you're going to split it out. Another horse that should absolutely be in your top 3 is Sham Rocket. This horse is going off at 6-1, extremely consistent. And this is a horse that should absolutely be included in all your exotics. The wins have come at lower levels, but has always had respectable finishes in graded stakes races, has shown the ability to hit the board and do so with class, has that ability to pass horses, come from behind that you like to see on turf. The race should set up well for Sham Rocket. So this is a horse at 6-1. I do like the value there to hit the board. I like this horse quite a bit. And is doing well recently too. Is performing well over the last few races. Now, a horse that might be worth taking a shot on is Sanctuary City, 20-1. A horse might be, this is maybe a horse for a course. Has hit the board 4 out of 5 times at Aqueduct. Has hit the board overall 5 out of 7 times this year. Step up in distance is concerning. Step up in class is concerning. So this is a horse that's stepping up in distance and class. I don't usually like that combination. That said, Ruben Silvera, if anybody of you, if those of you who follow horse racing, Parks Racing in Pennsylvania, Ruben Silvera is the leading jockey there. He's a very good jockey. It's going to give Sanctuary City a good ride. I just don't know. It might be a little too much. Maybe if you're going deep on exotics like a Superfecta, maybe throw Sanctuary City in there. But not going to have in my top 3. I'm not taking that big of a swing. And then Price Talk is, a horse that's at 8-1. If this was a horse at 12-1 or 15-1, I'd probably like the value a little bit more. It's a horse that's ran kind of one race good enough to hit the board. Granted, it was its last race, so maybe there's something there. But I still am a little worried about this. I think this is a horse that will level off a little bit and regress to the mean. That's something that you're going to see from a couple of other horses in this field over the next couple of races as well. Horses that have run big last time out, but listen, it may not work out this time. So Price Talk, not a horse I'm particularly interested in 8-1. So how do I see the Red Smith Stakes playing out? I'll be honest. I'm going to chase some Chad Brown value. You don't usually get a chance to say that because usually Chad Brown on turf, that's always the favorite. And the favorite's going to be in my top 3, but I'm going to go to Win Value Engineering. This is a horse I absolutely love, stepping up in class, but this is a horse that's getting faster and faster. And if you look at the figures, this is a horse that does not need to necessarily even run that much better than it's been running to win this race. And if it runs the exact same race it ran last time, it'll still probably hit the board. So I like Value Engineering to take that next step up. I know this is a step up in distance, but I trust Chad Brown. I like this horse. I like the value you're getting. So I have Value Engineering to win. I have Serve the King to place. I have Sham Rocket to show. So I got Chad Brown going 1-2, but I have his long shot up top and his favorite underneath. All right. Well, let's go to Churchill Downs for the Chilukki Stakes. And the weather in Churchill on Saturday is going to be fine. It's going to be, crystal clear up until then. So no concerns on the track. It's going to be nice and fast. And the Chilukki Stakes is a mile in length, but an important note here, it is a one-turn mile. So they start way out on the back stretch, and it's just that one-turn mile. So something to keep in mind in terms of how the early pace is going to play out. And this is for fillies and mares who are 3-year-olds and up. So let's take a look at this 8-horse field for the Chilukki Stakes. And in post position 1, you have She Can't Sing, trained by Chris Block and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffalione. Then Sally's Curlin, trained by Dale Romans and jockeyed by Brian Hernandez Jr. Matera, trained by Brad Cox and jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Miss Bigley, trained by Phil D'Amato and jockeyed by Martin Garcia. Pass the Plate, trained by Paul McGee and jockeyed by Joe Talamo. It's Cold Into Here, trained by Norm Cassie and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. Obligatory, trained by Bill Mott and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then finally, Princess Causeway, trained by Ian Wilkes and jockeyed by Chris Landeros. So this is one where the early speed is not necessarily as apparent. In the previous race, I said Channel Cat's going to be out there. You know how this race is going to play out. This race could play out a lot of different ways. The reason is that Princess Causeway is kind of in an interesting spot because Princess Causeway, who's breaking from the far outside, typically likes to get in the lead. Now, breaking from the far outside on a sprint is usually a good recipe to get in the lead. So the race and the post position sets up well. Here's the thing, though. Princess Causeway is traditionally a turf horse. If you look at Princess Causeway's races on dirt, Princess Causeway is never the early speed on dirt. Ever. Early speed on turf, never the early speed on dirt in her career. So I'm a little concerned because I don't know if Princess Causeway is going to go to the lead because every time Princess Causeway runs on dirt, mid-pack horse. Every time it runs on turf, front runner. And likes to go to the lead, likes to sit in 1-2. We'll see. A lot of this is going to be decided by how much Princess Causeway wants to get to the lead and how much they think that's the best strategy for the horse. The other horse here is She Can't Sing, going off at 6-1. Has the inside rail. She'll have to fire out of the gate to get to that position, but should be able to get to the lead because there's really no other obvious speed horse. It's interesting. The favorites, or two of the three co-favorites, Matera and Miss Bigley, they like to be forwardly placed, but they don't usually like to be in the lead. They like to sit 2, 3, 4. They don't like to sit 1. So She Can't Sing probably will be able to get the lead if she wants it. It's interesting. Tyler Gaffalione, jockey on She Can't Sing, very good jockey, won 6 races in a day last week at Churchill Downs. So he's very hot right now. And I typically really like him on horses that are like 6-1, 8-1. Like that's where Tyler usually gets a lot of really good value out of his rides. I am concerned about She Can't Sing in terms of winning this race. This is a horse that ran a monster the last time out and ran significantly better than it ever had before. And then ran a 95 Beyer speed figure last time out. So this is a horse that had been running the previous races, 80, 76, 81, 84, 85, 81 speed figures. Goes out, runs a 95 last time out. And basically wires the field at an optional claiming race. Now, granted, a lot of She Can't Sing's races are sprint races. They're at, somewhere between 5.5 and 7 furlongs. Now we're going a mile. Now it's a 1-turn mile, so that works out. And she might like the distance actually, but I'm a little worried about this horse, and I think that you're going to see a regression to the mean here. 95 would be more than enough to win this race if she actually ran a 95. Problem is, I don't think she's going to run a 95, and I don't even know if she's going to be able to run an 85 because it's even rare that she runs that fast. So I'm just worried about the ability that this horse has to necessarily sustain that. And again, this is a horse that has had 23 career starts. I highly doubt that in the 23rd start of its career, it now suddenly is going to take on a new type of speed. that it hasn't had before. So I would expect some regression when she can't sing. And because of that, even though she's on the early lead, I don't consider her a factor coming down the stretch. So that really kind of does leave things up to the favorites. And this is a race that sets up really nicely for the favorites because you don't have overwhelming speed up front. Even if Princess Causeway makes a run for it, it's not going to be overwhelming. And then you have Matera, Miss Bigley, and Obligatory sitting there in, a 3-1, 3-1, and 5-2 for Obligatory, sitting in stalking position. Matera is a horse that I don't like quite as much. This is a horse that had been on a 3-race winning streak, stepped up in class against She Dares the Devil at Envoutante, came in 4th in that race. There's no horse that's as good as She Dares the Devil in this race. There might not even be a horse as good as Envoutante in this race. That said, if you go back and look at those 3 victories that Matera had, the paces were not that wonderful. The speed fractions were pretty pedestrian. This would be a pretty significant step up. So I have my doubts about Matera a little bit in this particular space. Excuse me. So then we go to the other 2 favorites, Miss Bigley at 3-1. Virtually everything I just said about Matera can be repeated in terms of if this horse wants to go for the lead, it could. I don't think it will. I think it'll be happy to sit in that 2-3 spot and just track. She can't sing, but should get a very nice trip. She has struggled when running against some better fields in terms of finishing outside the winner's circle, but is incredibly consistent hitting the board in each of the last 6 races. What I will say is the level of competition in this race doesn't quite stack up to the level of competition in some of her previous races. So I'm a little less concerned about her potentially winning here than I would have been against some of her previous fields. And then there's Obligatory, who ran beautifully at the Cotillion Stakes at Parks behind a rather pedestrian pace that she was actually on. She was pushing Always Karina in that pace, ended up coming in second to Clairiere in that race. Now, here's the interesting part about Obligatory. Obligatory typically comes from well off the pace, but decided to really switch things up in that Cotillion Stakes at Parks and push the lead and ran really well, got a really strong second place finish. I don't know if Bill Mott decides to maybe do something similar where he goes, listen, there's not overwhelming speed here. Maybe we can get Obligatory out there pretty fast and really kind of get out near or on the lead. Have a pretty nice post position. This one turn should set up nicely. Obligatory is a horse that actually likes, has done well sprinting. This is a horse that actually goes back and forth between sprinting and route racing, which is uncommon, but you see this horse going back between 6-7 furlongs, mile and a 16th. So it has some flexibility. I think the 1-turn mile really plays into Obligatory's hands quite nicely. And so I think that Bill Mott might have this horse a little bit more forwardly placed than in some of her previous races. The last time out was not great, admittedly, but this is a horse that has run well at Churchill and has run well at a mile. So I like that combination. And then I will just very quickly mention the horse Past the Plate. This is a horse that has, if you just look at speed figures, some of the best speed figures in the field. The problem is they're on turf. This horse does not run on dirt. When the horse runs on dirt, which is uncommon, but it does happen occasionally, when the horse runs on dirt, she's done well, I should say, but that's typically against other turf horses because it's a turf race that's been taken off the turf because of conditions and is now being run on dirt. So I sometimes discount how effective horses can be on a dirt race against other dirt horses when their only real dirt experience is against turf horses. So, we'll see. Past the Plate at 20-1 is probably appropriately priced, but people who like to play that surface change angle, just fair warning. Past the Plate's there. I think maybe has a chance. Again, you're not going to get a blistering pace here. I think this is going to be a very reasonable setup for the favorites, but we'll see how things play out. So how do I ultimately see it? Well, this one's a little bit more chalky on my end. I went with some big value in the first one. This is a little bit more chalky. I'm going to go Miss Bigley to win. I'm going to go Obligatory to place. I'm going to go Princess Causeway to show. I think Princess Causeway is going to come in third there. I think she'll get a nice trip. And it should be pointed out that she is also a little bit faster than Past the Plate, who is this long shot. So Princess Causeway has some dirt background and is not unbeknownst to this particular surface. All right, so let's go to the last race that I'll preview today, which is the Native Diver Stakes out at Del Mar. And the weather is always beautiful where the surf meets the turf. So it's going to be clear and fast for the dirt surface. And this is a 1.125 grade 3 race for 3-year-olds and up. So let's take a look at this Native Diver Stakes 8-horse field, which, I mean, this is like the Kentucky Derby for West Coast racing. This is, 8 horses at Del Mar. My God. Normally we're lucky to get 5. So these 8 horses, we can thank Bob Baffert for a lot of these, by the way. But in post position 1, the horse is Established, trained by Richard Baltus, jockeyed by Victor Espinoza. And the 2 position, you have Midcourt, trained by John Sheriffs and jockeyed by Edwin Maldonado. Wicked Train, trained by Robert Hess Jr. and jockeyed by Umberto Ruspoli. Bal Harbor, trained by Gregory Sacco and jockeyed by Joe Bravo. Then you have the 3 Bob Baffert horses, Azul Coast, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt, 8 Rings, jockeyed by Juan Hernandez, and Axeman, jockeyed by Mike Smith. And then finally on the 8th post position, you have Kiss Today Goodbye, trained by Eric Kruljack and jockeyed by Kent DeSormo. All right, so how is this one going to play out? Well, this is an interesting race because I'll be honest, you handicap this race and you're going to have to kind of grit your teeth through a couple of these horses because every time you start to like something about a horse, you see a red flag. There's not one horse in this field that checks all the boxes. And it's why all the value is so close together. Everybody's basically between 4-1 and 8-1. Because all of these horses have some red flags and all of them have things to like. And so we'll see how this plays out. But ultimately, this race is going to be determined by Bob Baffert because his 3 horses are going to determine the pace and I think the ultimate finish of this race. Azul Coast, 8 Rings, and Axeman. Azul Coast is a nice horse. I don't like the value at 4-1. I like that Flavian's back on board. Last time out, you might remember Azul Coast, for lack of a better word, ran interference for Medina Spirit and promptly finished 17 lengths off the pace. I mean, Azul Coast really fell on its sword last time out to help Medina Spirit at the Awesome Again make sure just to clear the field and make sure nobody was going to challenge Medina for the early lead. Ended up cooking herself in the process. And like I said, finishing really far back. It should be noted that Bob Baffert took Flavian off of Azul Coast for that race and is now back on Azul Coast for this race. Amazing how these things work. So, we'll see. I don't know if Azul Coast will necessarily get a preferred running style out of this race. This is a horse that has traditionally come from a little bit off the pace. It's not an overwhelming horse. Has hit the board at a grade 3 as a juvenile 2 years ago. Other graded stakes experiences have not been that great. This is not an overwhelming field, that said, so Azul Coast should certainly be taken seriously and certainly will come from off the pace and should get a pretty nice trip in the grand scheme of things. Then you have 8 Rings. This is a really fascinating horse because if you watch my Breeders' Cup preview, you know that 8 Rings ran 2 weeks ago. That's right, 8 Rings ran at the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile that was won by Life is Good. 8 Rings finished 4th in that race, and 8 Rings has traditionally been a sprint horse, a one-turn sprint horse that Baffert has slowly moved up into a route horse, and so has increased the distance the last few times out. Now we're running 1.125 miles, which is the longest distance since run by far. 8 Rings does have, as a juvenile, some experience and some success running route races. Again, if you have to go back 2 years to find something as a juvenile, it brings into question how much that translates as a 4-year-old now against other adult horses. Again, should get a good trip, should be in a stalking position. I just am curious about both the layoff in terms of only being 2 weeks and the distance. I don't like that combination. That said, the horse worked out beautifully this past week. Ran a 59.2 5 furlong workout. So it's just breezing along Del Mar's surface. So clearly came out fresh, but still the step up in distance on the short rest, I just don't love that combination for 8 Rings. Interestingly enough, I actually like Bob Baffert's longest shot, Axeman, quite a bit. As I said, there's red flags with all these horses, and this is one of them, because with Axeman, is a horse that's had a really long layoff. and, has had about a 220-day layoff. But this is a horse that will act as the early speed and has the post position to do it in terms of being pretty far outside, should be able to settle down and get a nice position, will not get pushed for that early lead. There's no overwhelming early speed in this field. So you're not going to see a speed duel emerge. Axeman should be able to set very reasonable fractions and get out on that lead. When Axeman is able to do that, good things happen. Good things also happen to Axeman when he's got Mike Smith aboard. Mike Smith has been on this horse 3 times. He's won 2 of those races. Both of them came at a mile plus. He's coming off a long layout, but the workouts are very nice. He's trending in the right direction, I think, in terms of those workouts. So I really like Axeman to get the perfect trip under Mike Smith. I think Mike knows exactly how to ride this horse. When this horse gets a front-running effort, it can really go. And so I like for Axeman to grab that early lead, set really reasonable paces, and then have plenty left down the stretch. So I like that. I think Axeman at 6-1 gives you a little bit of value in a field that does not provide a lot. So the other non-Bob Baffert horses. Well, let's list a couple of them. As I said, there's red flags for everybody. Midcourt, coming off at 4-1. This is a horse that lost by 62 lengths last time out. 62. Was essentially walked off the course at the Awesome Again Stakes. This is a horse that had a very consistent 2020. Didn't win a lot, but placed a lot in 2020. Has had all sorts of issues, health issues, just running issues. In 2021, has not run that often. The last time out is concerning. Yes, the workouts are good, but that performance at the Awesome Again, just in the back of my mind, I'm just worried that this horse, I think the horse is sound. I don't think it'll be a gate scratch or anything like that, but I'm just worried this horse's best days are probably behind it. It's been regressing the last few times out, and well before the 62 lengths in the Awesome Again Stakes. So I'm a little out on Midcourt, which is too bad because it was a really good horse last year. And like I said, remarkably consistent in terms of hitting the board. Now, a horse that I do like to hit the board today is Kiss Today Goodbye at 5-1. This is a horse coming off a layoff. And so, again, there's always something that makes you go, what about this? Raise your eyebrow a little bit. This is a horse that's gotten absolutely crushed its last 3 times out. 8th, 6th, and 7th. So why on God's green earth, Matthew, do you like this horse? Well, let me tell you who this horse lost against the last 3 times out. Express Train, Tripoli, Royal Ship, Idol, Maxfield, Knicks Go. Hello. I mean, those are a lot of Breeders' Cup horses, a lot of Breeders' Cup eligible horses, a lot of Breeders' Cup Classic winning horses in Knicks Go. There's a lot of really good horses in that field. And so it's just been running against monster competition. And there is not a horse in this field that can hold a candle to any of those horses. So yes, Kiss Today Goodbye has been getting smoked in high-level races. This is not a high-level race. It's a grade 3, but the field is not overwhelming. Should get a nice trip. Should be positioned well. And will be very fresh. And has had nice workouts. And like I said, I think things are going to be reasonable up front. I think Kiss Today Goodbye can have plenty left for a nice kick coming down the stretch. So I like Kiss Today Goodbye to hit the board. A horse that I'm a little worried about that people might try to take a shot at is Established. This is a horse that's taking a step up in distance and class. Again, I usually don't like that combination when you're doing both of those things. And the only other time it's run at this distance in a graded stakes race, finished 12th. Not ideal. It's not what you're looking for. So ultimately, I think this does come down to a couple of other horses in the Baffert barn. So we will see how this plays out. But I have it. Axeman to win, Kiss Today Goodbye to place, and Azul Coast to show. So I have Bob coming in 1 and 3. I really do like Axeman. I like that value. I like Mike Smith aboard. Sometimes there's just that synergy between a jockey and a horse. And I think that's what you're seeing with Axeman and Mike Smith. So that's the way I see the Native Diver Stakes playing out. Well, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed going coast to coast and previewing the greatest stakes action at Aqueduct, Churchill Downs, and Del Mar. And make sure to head over to amalfimedia.com, linked in the episode notes or below the video, to get my picks for the entire Saturday card at Del Mar. Additionally, come back on Monday morning for a race recap and update on the latest horse racing news. Now, that's on the podcast only, so you have to follow the podcast to get the race recap and the latest news. And listen, if some of these races don't play out the way I think, I talk about it. I like accountability. I like transparency. If things don't play out, I fess up to it. I own up to it. And we talk about what I got wrong and why I got wrong, and maybe a little bit of patting on the back when I get things right. But I like to analyze those things and talk about what happened and what we can learn from it. Finally, just a reminder to head over and follow, download, rate, and review the Win Play Show on the podcast platform of your choice, and subscribe to the Win Play Show on YouTube, in addition to following me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace for all the great horse racing content you need to get through the 2022 season. Until next time, I'm Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, friends, and reminding you that it's now post time.